Today is St. Patrick's Day, and as I've been sharing in chapel, most people are unaware that Patrick was a human trafficking victim. Now the day is mainly celebrated with drunkenness and stupidity, a lot of green beer drinking. But St. Patrick, when he was 16 years old, he was kidnapped by pirates. He was actually from a very powerful family. His father and grandfather were the town councilor at the time. This was about 370 AD in England. And he was kidnapped by pirates and taken for 6 years and held as a slave. And he had to work with no pay, a very oppressive situation that he was in. And by all of our definitions of human trafficking, he was trafficked. He one day heard a voice from God saying, "Now's your day of escape," and that there was a ship waiting for him down at the harbor. So he did run away. He did find that ship. The ship took him back to his home. When he got home, he had been a Christian all this time in the Celtic tradition. This was before Roman Catholicism went through that area of Britain. And so he became a priest, and he felt compelled by the love of God to go back to the land of his captivity, because he could see that these people did not have any tradition of Christianity and did not know Christ. So he became a missionary, went back to the land of his captivity, and he preached, and he won many people and did many great things within Ireland, which is why they still celebrate him to this day. He was a reformer, and with the power of God, he helped transform that society. So I would urge you, in light of the fact that human trafficking is such an enormous issue right now in our world and even in this county, that maybe perhaps we can start a new oral tradition in the future to remember the real St. Patrick. This is one of the few things we have left on our calendar. It's a real holiday right on our calendar, and maybe we can help teach and educate other people about who Patrick really is. He is our brother in Christ. He was one of our Christian forefathers. How would you like it if your brother's memory was besmirched that way, that everyone's just getting drunk, has no idea who you were? I don't think it's right, and I think that maybe we need to retake and reclaim a holiday that is rightfully somebody who is related to us in the kingdom. So let's remember that for Patrick's Day. And also, regarding human trafficking, a lot of people also aren't aware of the fact that Florida is one of the top 3 states for trafficking in the United States. And folks, it's passing right through here in Palm Beach County. And I know that a lot of folks are not aware of that, but Miami being a port city, it's trafficking up through Miami, Broward County. When it hits here in Palm Beach, spreads out. About half of that trafficking is sex trafficking, as you're aware of. The other half is labor. And with that labor, you've got like the Immokalee workers just over here to the west, agricultural people who aren't paid properly for what they're doing in the fields for what you're eating. That dollar burger, folks, it doesn't cost $1. Someone else is paying the cost for what we demand to have lower prices for. We need to think about that. Other people are paying the cost for our demand for low-priced goods. So these are people made in God's image. Genesis 1:26 tells us that we are all made in God's image. And so it's our responsibility to treat each other that way. And that's one of the things that I feel is missing when people wonder, how could so much evil happen with the trafficking? I don't believe that people still retain that information of we're made in God's image. When you teach a lot of evolution without the spiritual component, I don't think that people who believe that they've just evolved from nothing are aware of the fact that we were made in God's image. There's a divinity factor within each one of us. There's people who've never been taught that. They're completely unaware. And I think that's our duty, when we do know that, to proclaim that, to teach that, to transmit that into our society, and then we'll begin to affect change. People won't treat each other that way. They won't treat themselves that way. People who are the traffickers or people who are buying other people, They're hurt too. They're lonely too. They're in pain. They're trying to buy love, but you can't buy love. You can buy sex, but you can't buy love. And the more you buy sex, the more hurt you're going to be, because the dividend on that is just pain and loneliness. And that gets worse and worse, and hurt people hurt other people. And that's what we see in our society. So how can we affect change? I believe it's our duty for personal holiness and to just begin to raise the standard, change the standard. It starts with you. There would be no supply if there were no demand. Human trafficking has now surpassed arms smuggling and arms dealing, weapon dealing, is the number 2 black market trade in the world. Humans. Number 1 is drug trafficking. Number 2 is human trafficking. And number 3 is now weapons and arm trafficking. So why is that? I'll break it down for you. When you sell drugs, you might be able to water down the drugs a bit, the middlemen in between. But in the end, it's a single use. It's over. When you deal with a human being, you can keep reusing that human being. You use them over and over and over again until they've been so used up, they're either dead or too sick to perform anymore. That is why human trafficking is moving up there. It's about greed. It's a billion-dollar industry. We need to fight bad business with good business. And that is what we're doing with our agency. In fact, tonight is our grand opening. We've started a retail store called Mission Gifts. I've been working for 20 years doing economic development for the victims to help them learn how to make things instead of selling their body as a thing. We're not a thing. But I'm an artist and a craftsperson, and it's important for us to teach other people to excellently make things to sell, because you're not a thing. You shouldn't be sold. And we shouldn't be buying and selling each other, but the crafts, yes, the things that we make. And so it's a change of mentality. People use themselves as a commodity when they have nothing left, when there's no hope left, when there's nothing else to do. But all of us who have skills and God's given us talents, we have to learn how to take that into the world and begin to change those options for people. And I had to create these things from the ground up as far as this economic development project, because I went in and saw there was a need. And so we just created it's very small, but if all of us do very small things, it all makes a difference. Here is a definition from one of our producer groups, Nightlight in Bangkok. We sell their jewelry, and it's made from trafficking victims and people leaving prostitution in Thailand. And they came up with a really good definition, I felt, on what human trafficking is and how it comes about. Human trafficking comes about when vulnerable people who lack decent choices for a basic standard of living are preyed on by those whose greed has no boundaries. And that is, from my experience, what trafficking is. I know a lot of people here have seen the movie Taken, and so they're equating human trafficking with kidnapping, and that does exist, and it does exist a lot here in America. But quite honestly, the majority of trafficking comes about when people are just looking for jobs. It's an honest job seeker, and they got scammed. And very similar to like these Ponzi schemes that have been going on in our neighborhood here, where a recruiter will come in and legitimately give a few people jobs in the village so that there's a track record, just like a Ponzi scheme. And those people who have successfully gotten jobs will rave about it. Yeah, we're making good money. And then that recruiter comes in and bang, 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 will take people out and be selling them off into human trafficking. That really is where most of trafficking is coming from, is people who are legitimately trying to get a job.